Well, as you may know, next Wednesday will be my last day here at the anchor desk. And while I will no longer anchor newscast, I will still be part of the News 4 team. You and I have shared a lot of history together over these past 40 years. And over the next week, working with the very talented editor Dan Holland, I'd like to show you some of those moments, some of my favorite stories, some of the sports stories I've covered, the celebrities I've interviewed, and more. So let's begin tonight with some of the biggest stories in Western New York that you and I have seen together.
I want to update you now on the breaking news that we are following tonight from Clarence Center.
It started with a plane crash just before the 11 o'clock news on February 12, 2009. We thought we were reporting on a small plane crash, but as the night wore on, the tragic reality was revealed.
He confirms for me that it was a large jetliner that crashed with 50 to 60 people on board.
Don Postles and I did not leave the anchor desk for 8 hours that night, reporting with great sadness on the scope of the catastrophe. 49 people, including a pregnant woman, dead on Colgan Air Flight 3407, and one man dead in his burning Clarence Center home. Our one-hour report on the crash, entitled For the Families, went on to win regional and national Edward R. Murrow awards. But the story didn't end with the crash. It continues to this day as victims' families keep fighting to maintain tougher pilot training standards that have kept the skies safer ever since the crash.
This is News 4 at 5.
I'm Jackie Walker in Oklahoma City, where rescuers are tackling the grim task of trying to reach the daycare center inside that bombed-out federal office building.
We just had some kind of explosion downtown.
In April of 1995, we learned that a young man from Pendleton was suspected in the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 men, women, and little children in the building's daycare center. Quickly, I was on a plane to Oklahoma with photographer Tom Vetter, where we spent days reporting from a heartbroken city.
And I mean, as soon as we heard it, we ran out and saw the little children on the street and people bloody just running down. It bothers me. It still bothers me.
We've seen the most evil that people can do.
Governor Frank Keating and his wife were highly visible and highly accessible in the aftermath. It seemed everyone knew someone who was lost in the bombing, and the rescuers themselves were traumatized.
Hometown people, and I feel for it anywhere, but when it's in your own front yard, it's a different story.
And when I returned home, Western New Yorkers reached out to Oklahoma City, donating cash to support the work there of the Salvation Army. Timothy McVeigh, who grew up in Western New York, was convicted of the bombing and later executed. His rental truck explosion remains the worst act of domestic terrorism in the nation's history.
Good evening to you. More than 2 decades of terror came to an end in a Buffalo courtroom today.
The story of the bike path killer, Artemio Sanchez, stretched over a quarter century. He was an elusive predator who raped perhaps 20 women and murdered 3.
Whatever sentence I get today, I deserve.
A wide-ranging investigation by a task force of law enforcers finally brought Artemio Sanchez to justice in 2007.
It is this court's intention that you never see freedom again.
After sentencing Sanchez to the maximum, 75 years to life behind bars, State Supreme Court Justice Christopher Burns granted me a rare private interview because he wanted to allay the long-held fear in this community.
Did you look at him as you were pronouncing sentence?
I did.
What did you see there?
I saw a realization of a man that will not be free to walk the streets again.
And he was right. Artemio Sanchez, the bike path killer, died by apparent suicide while serving his prison term.
A lot of the patrons watched in horror as the twister came their way.
Weather has always thundered its way to the top of the list of big stories I've covered, including the floods that wiped away homes at Hoover Beach. And the blizzard of '85, the infamous six-pack blizzard.
Here's the problem. I'm standing in the middle of Elmwood Avenue. A city plow has cleared one lane here, but they'll never get the whole road clear as long as there are cars like this stuck right in the middle of the road.
It's tough. You know, here we're trying to clear North Fillmore here, Martin Luther King, and people are coming in and out like it's a summer afternoon. We just can't have that.
I'll never forget touring the snow-covered Buffalo streets with Mayor Jimmy Griffin as he oversaw the plowing effort with Parks Commissioner Bob Delano at the wheel. The horrific mass shooting at Tops on Jefferson Avenue, the murders of 10 people, is undoubtedly one of Buffalo's biggest tragedies. It brought me into the anchor desk for hours during that jarring Saturday.
We're coming together because this is a terrible, terrible event to happen in our city.
And we were all there in the days beyond as the president, the vice president, and numerous leading figures traveled here to pay respects and lend a hand.
We're just one small part of it. This is our community, and when our community is affected, we try and step up, do our best to step up.
Our city suffered such a terrible loss, and that deep loss has given rise to new interests, new ideas, and new hope for change across the east side of Buffalo. In my 45-year news career, no story has been bigger, longer, more influential, or more life-changing than the COVID-19 pandemic.
Researchers at the University at Buffalo say the Omicron variant has now been detected here in Erie County.
More than 1 million Americans died, and virtually everything in our lives has changed in some way. Schools, businesses, family life, media, travel, healthcare.
The Brothers of Mercy nursing home in Clarence began the second round of shots today.
And COVID changed my life dramatically. I had planned to retire in 2020, just before the pandemic, but once it began to unfold and the fear began to set in, I felt a great responsibility to deliver vital information to our community. I'll always remember the loneliness of working nights in an empty newsroom as we all limited our human contact. And I will always be proud of my News 4 colleagues who worked in uncertain and sometimes frightening situations to give our viewers the life-saving information they needed. The pandemic is quite simply the biggest story of my career, a career which has given me the great honor of witnessing so much Western New York history from a front row seat.